Alright, a little video for the day, if you will. This is really just to share with others the process I've been using to ship, or hopefully ship, a bunch of old 10-inch 78 RPM shellac records from, I really think from the 30s and 40s. I inherited probably about 150 of these things recently, and threw out a bunch that were cracked or really scratched up, but mostly they looked like they were pretty well taken care of. I remember when I was a child playing some of these on my grandmother's old Victrola. Actually, it was like the German Victrola. It was a German-made, hand-cranked unit, but instead of the big horn up over the record, it channeled the sound down through the tone arm into a horn below the turntable and came out through a set of louvers on the bottom that you could open and close a little bit to change the volume. Anyway, we're selling the actual player at an estate sale, but I've been charged to get rid of the majority of the records, and I've cleaned them and sorted them by label, and all told I'm probably boxing up about 120 of these things. I've already done a couple. Again, I'm boxing them according to the record label. In this case it's Decca, and they're all different quantities for each one, but what I've settled on doing is, I'm sorry for the bad lighting, I'm doing this in a storage room, basically an unused bedroom, and I just can't get very good light. I can push that out of the way a little bit. Anyway, so I've got some of these 12 by 12 by 12 U-line boxes that I picked up from the local shipping point, and this is the kind where it nominally makes a 12 by 12 by 12 box, but there are these built-in fold lines, you can kind of see them there, that allow you to fold the box down to its more like a 12 by 12 by 6, and that seems like a good height. Obviously it costs more to ship a bigger box, so I'm using that, and the records need blocking to keep them away from the edges because they're fairly brittle, and if they come up against the side of the box and the box gets handled roughly, they can crack. They're not like vinyl LPs, they're much more brittle. So I've decided to use some of this kind of product. These are just from the Home Depot, whatever brand they have. They call it the do-it-yourself insulation kit. And basically what it is a bunch of sheets of 3/4 inch, roughly 3/4 inch styrofoam sheets, a little bit more than 14 inches wide. They say 14.5, and 4 feet long. And with a hot foam cutting knife, I can carve these up pretty readily and use them for blocking. So I'll go through a step-by-step on this. Sitting right there next to a bunch of old musical instruments is another Heathkit restoration project waiting in the wings for those people who are following that. And just over to my left is another one that's very similar. I've got these things stacked up wide and deep. Anyway, so I've got, since this room is carpeted, I've got a piece of aluminum laying down here on the floor so I can lay this down without worrying about it burning or melting the carpeting. But I'm using this, well, this is Nordstrand, but that's a joke. It's just a generic Chinese styrofoam cutter. Fairly inexpensive. I'm sure I bought this on eBay a lot of years ago, used it a lot, and that goes through the foam like a hot knife through butter. Another thing I have is a roll of paper towel and some just plain old multi-purpose laser printer copy paper that's been cut down to a little bit less than 10 inches long, because I've been sticking these sheets in between every record just to provide a little buffer between them. So I have a bunch of these at the ready. The other tools I'm using are a tape measure, a carpenter's angle with inch markings on it, a Sharpie pen, and a tape gun with poly tape on it. So after taping up the bottom of the box, I'm going to definitely be using this at its lowest height of 6 inches, but just to get the flaps out of the way, I'm folding them over so I can get into the box a little more readily. So the goal is to have at least a couple layers of that styrofoam sheet on the bottom, and then likewise on all 4 sides, and then put a plug of styrofoam on top of the bottom 2 ones that are laying flat, so that the records can sit flat on that, but they can't slide sideways because the side ones are at a lower level than the third level that's flat, if that makes any sense. You'll see it in the steps. The carpenter's square comes in useful for marking cut lines on the foam. Without having to mark at each end, I can just mark on one end and then use the square to draw perpendicular lines from the edge here, which is a factory edge and it's nice and straight. Alright, I've got a couple of sheets marked up where I'm going to cut. And this will make all the horizontal pieces and all of the vertical pieces. Unfortunately, this is such a crowded storage room that I don't really have a good place to set up a tripod for the camera, so I'm not going to cut the foam on camera. I'll just have to show you the results. Except maybe I can do a little one handheld example. Kind of like that. Okay, I've got a 12 by 12 piece. Goes down the bottom. Another 12 by 12 piece. That makes that particular pad. And then, let's see. Which ones of these are the short ones? These are the short ones, these are the long ones. We've got 3 long ones. Since 2 of these together make, or 3 of these together make up 2 inches thick, that's why they're not really exactly the dimensions they're advertised to be. Should be more like 2.5 inches if they were really the dimension they're supposed to be. And then one over on this side, between these is 10 inches. And then I've got the short ones. There. Now there's a 10-inch by 10-inch opening in there, and to keep those side pieces from sliding around, and also to keep the records on the bottom from trying to slide under these side pieces, I have this extra 10-inch by 10-inch piece that sits up on top of there. So now I have this cocoon that I can lay the records into. And I have another 10 by 10 that'll go in there on top of the records. But I start out with a square of paper towel and fold it over again. Makes a roughly 10 by 10 piece. And that sits down in the hole So the records are on something a little softer than the styrofoam, although that's not really that soft. And I start out by putting one disc in there, and then I start putting in the cut down copy paper. Etc. And there is the last one in this stack. And for this one I put another folded up piece of paper towel in there, just because it seems like the thing to do, although I can think of no particular engineering reason to do it that way. Then I put my 10 by 10 square styrofoam on top of that. Now the box is going to fold down to roughly this point. There's a break line right here. So I may actually squeeze in another 12 by 12 on top of that. But to pad this up, I just stick in some of the cuttings. Kind of like that. Yeah, I think I'll cut another 12 by 12 and put it on top of there. Alright, here's the final 12 by 12 piece set down in there. Now I have to use my utility knife to cut down the corners to the fold line 4 different places around. Okay, now I just push those over. Until it gets like that. I have to use both hands to really get this down nice and straight. Okay, I've got my box all folded up pretty easy please, taped up, and it weighs really the weight of the cardboard box and the records. The styrofoam contributes virtually nothing to it, and yet I think I've got a nice structure there. It has enough barrier. If anything punches through a little bit from a hard impact, it won't actually reach the records. It'll be separated by the blocking. And the styrofoam doesn't provide a lot of actual padding. Other than that, it just provides some distance between the rougher outside environment and direct physical contact. Or, you know, if you didn't have the padding and the records were right up against the side and something put a hard wrap there, it passes that straight through to the records, and then it's left to them to dissipate it, whereas with the foam would dissipate it. So hopefully this will work out well, and that's all I have on this video.